Good evening, familia. This is Ray Collazo, and you're watching and listening to The Collazo Show. The Collazo Show provides analysis and conversation at the intersection of leadership, politics, and cultura. This is your host, Rafael Ray Collazo. Kind of depends how you know me. You might call me Rafael. You might know me as Ray. You might call me Rafa, Ralph, Ralphie. Only mommy gets to called me Rafaelito. But nevertheless, subscribe to the Collazo Show on Substack exclusively here live on Substack twice a week. And then we show the replay on YouTube. So you can definitely also check out for the replay and clips and segments of the Collazo Show on our YouTube page at the Collazo Show on YouTube. And please subscribe to our Substack so you can be the first to watch and hear these provocative conversations about what's happening in our community from our perspective. Later on in the show, we will share 3 things you need to understand as we embark on this journey to save our democracy. And, you know, contractually as a Puerto Rican, I'm contractually obligated to have a Bad Bunny segment. It's in my contract in the very, very, very fine print. So we'll talk about Benito's weekend in Medellin. I don't know, is it Medellin? You know, say it. The Colombians have to confirm this for me because when I was the 2 L's, like a Y, I think it's Medellin. But I always kind of hear them put a little flavor in it, Medellin, which almost sounds Portuguese. Anyway, my cafeteros, my paisas will school me because, of course, their Spanish is so incredible. They're always right on those things. So I'm being a little light because this is all very heavy times. And, you know, I don't have to tell, certainly the people watching this show, you know, how heavy our hearts are. I'm going to put the names, not just of Mr. Prady, who we, you know, I mean, Alex Prady, what a wonderful man. It's in his death, it was an honor to learn more about his incredible life. And he was tragically killed. We would, from my eyes, pretty clearly murdered by ICE officials in an altercation that should have never happened. And anyone with any common sense and any belief in your eyes knows what went down in Minneapolis. And we pray for his family, pray for his soul. But I wanted to also, of course, Renee Good and Keith Porter. And I wanted to, you know, while that's the latest and most terrible moment, we've already lost 9 people to ICE and DHS in this supposed immigration crackdown just in this year. The year just started, familia. So 9 people, 6 of which we lost in ICE detention situations, and they were all very murky circumstances. The Southeast Asian brother Parati La in the chat was a Philly guy that you see in the crawl, and we had some mutual friends in the Southeast Asian community in South Philadelphia. So, you know, this is hitting closer and closer to home, unfortunately. So I'm going to, you know, throughout the show, highlight all of the 9 names because I want to not to minimize Mr. Prady's death, because Mr. Prady, I mean, you talk about a man to be admired. You know, someone that dedicated his life to not only being a nurse, which is just one of the most admirable professions in our society, the people that literally keep us alive and doing what that touch only nurses have, to be an ICU nurse, which is an extra responsibility, literally handling life and death situations on a daily basis, and to be there for our veterans at a VA, being a top-notch ICU nurse at a VA veterans hospital. You can't get better than that, brother. And just it's tragedies upon tragedies upon tragedies. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, and I think this is part of the conversation we're having with ourselves, right, in our communities, and as we're trying to shake people out of to understand what's really going on here. That we're not only losing as we approach our 250th anniversary, we may not make it because this is just not the country that we're not the same country that we were a year and a half ago. But to that point around shaking people up, how many people have to die before they realize what's really happening here? You know, it doesn't. You don't hit a number. Well, after 2,000 people, you can call it a Holocaust, you know, or call it for what it is, a fascist regime. This is happening in real time, fam, and they just started. You know, the number that really hit me is so many statistics. 3 people have gotten killed in Minneapolis this year, in the last, beginning of this year, 3 weeks. 2 of which are these ICE tragedies. They're only making our country less safe, and they're terrorizing us. Unfortunately, from coast to coast, Maine. Did you see the young man who I believe was probably of an African immigrant descent? Whisked away uh, on his way, coming back from his job being correctional officer, with his car in the middle of the street on, and he was just incredulous what was happening to him. But first, fam, let's talk about the long goodbye. I went through this over the last several years. My mother, in her late 60s, we started noticing memory loss. And, in the beginning, you just sort of brush it off, People get older, they forget stuff. It happens. And, you sort of begin this process of denial. And, one day it's just memory loss. You just kind of chalk it up. Then one day it's pretty clear your mom doesn't really have the wherewithal to drive. So you sell the car and take the keys. And then one day you're looking for your mom, and it turns out she walked to the corner pharmacy and just sort of wandered around and spent over $100 in the pharmacy. It just sort of didn't really seem like she have a sense of time and what she was doing, and not even sure if she could figure out how to walk home. And then you had to figure out alternative living arrangements, and then you realize she can't be left alone in an apartment or anywhere where she could be at a stove, because she might forget to turn it off. She might walk out of where she's living and not understand, how to get home or where she is. They have to make other living arrangements and other arrangements, and and then slowly she just kind of, we're saying the long goodbye. And took about 7 years. It took, the last, my mom was in pretty good shape health wise till the last 4 or 5 months of it. And she got an infection, just never recovered from it. And all the while until the very end, you're sort of denying what's happening. And as you go through the last stages of the long goodbye with anyone that's dealt with family members, loved ones going through terminal illnesses, or, in this case, dementia in particular is insidious, because it's just, you feel just so terrible for your loved ones, because it's like a mental trap, and you just have no idea what they're going through, and science doesn't know what they're going through in reality. So so many questions come to your mind, ethical questions, and it's just so fucking frustrating. And when you go through that process, one of the things, especially at the end of the long goodbye, especially with dementia, is that you go through a process of wondering what more you could have done. And, in my case, as an oldest brother, being the oldest, being the first, you particularly, at least in my case, beat yourself up about it, because, boys are just not as good at these things as daughters and women. And my mom, had the blessing, but also, on some level, having 3 boys, we did the best we could, I guess, but it's not the same. And, to this day, I still wonder, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years. We lost my mom in about 6 weeks, and about 2 months, I guess. And, you just wonder, what more I could have done. What more I could have done to give my mom flowers while she was alive. And you're going to hear me talk about Sonia Collazo a whole lot, fam, on the Collazo show. I mean, she was just the best of the best. And literally a Hall of Famer. And I know she's in a better place now. And you just go through, you just wonder the rest of your life what more you could have done. Give her flowers and spend more time with her, and have her spend more time with all her grandkids. And did you take her to Puerto Rico enough? And did you, Did you make her last months in this service as comfortable as possible? You just beat yourself up about it, and I don't know if I ever get over it. And but that moment of feeling like you realize what was going on too late is one of the worst emotions of it. And now I feel I'm going through that again with our country, because it feels like in reality what the feeling I'm getting, and I think some of you are getting, is that we've been saying the long goodbye to this country ever since Trump came down those escalators, 11 years. And now we're feeling we're at the end of that process where we've been saying goodbye to this country since 2015. And it's kind of too late. We've lost it. And it's just sort of, it may already be goodbye. And, we can go through I don't think any of us individually can blame ourselves, obviously. It's major historical factors that come into play. And, I'm certainly not blaming myself for what happened here. But you just think about all the steps, along the way, all the supposed political, governmental, constitutional, and social guardrails that just had to collapse for this to happen. The moment he came down the escalator and said the fundamental problem with our country was Mexican immigrants, because they were disproportionately, overwhelmingly, the most dangerous criminal element of our society. That should have been disqualifying for everyone. The media, Republican primary voters, elite society. That should have been it. That should have been it. He should have been written off the way a David Duke or a Pat Buchanan or what was that racist motherfucker in the 60s? In other eras we had crazy xenophobic racist guys run for president or be political figures, and they for the last modern era they fizzled out for obvious reasons. And it wasn't. It was shocking. It was titillating. The media got, I remember I always felt, the head of Saturday Night Live, his name's not coming to my old timer now. There was a controversy when he allowed him to be the host of Saturday Night Live, Trump, that summer in 2015, if y'all recall, or that fall. And, about how could you allow that? How could you co-sign on some level, allow his platform and allow him, just because he was a celebrity or is a celebrity, to do that. I remember he went on Jimmy Fallon. Remember Jimmy Fallon? Well, I know he's a good guy, good brother. The roots, him, and it turns out, I found out later in life, me and Jimmy have mutual Latino, Hispanic friends. Jimmy is a good guy, but, on some level, NBC co-signed on this and allowed him to be an acceptable figure. He was not a pariah after he said that and continued to say all kind of racist, crazy shit. And Republican primary voters, and partially it was, Republican leadership, and partially that humongous field of losers. There wasn't a good candidate in the whole fucking bunch. I guess maybe Kasich, by default, maybe, Jeb Bush, maybe. But just a clown car of candidates. And, because of that voting dilution, because they were just so pitiful, Republican primary voters, picked the best of a bunch of bad options for them. And then, going to the final, I'll tell you the rest of the history, right? Clinton, Hillary, and all the reasons people did mental gymnastics not to vote for her. And he tried to take over the country in January 6th, 2021, and we let him off the hook again. And Merrick Garland's, talk about meekness, and, McConnell could have ended it, by convicting him in the Senate after the second impeachment. But, no, we'll just kick the can down the curb, and voila, here we are. And so, it's really hit me with a ton of bricks, recently. um, with this blatant trampling of the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the rule of law, incredible corruption. Um, just the only real policy he has from a policy perspective with the budget bill was, permanent, generous tax cuts for the rich, and the rest of y'all gets a whole lot, including the budget, including the deficit, including your health care. But 2 million people have already have had to drop their health care coverage just in these first few weeks of our new healthcare landscape reality. And that doesn't include the people whose food stamps are getting chinched on, and that's not including all the different social programs and government programs that are being nickel and dimed, and we're getting less service for our money. And by the way, prices are only just going up. And so, I'm going through a lot of these same emotions about this long goodbye. Because despite, and you'll get, as you get to know me, I do have a lot of mixed emotions about this country I was born and raised in, and my people have been American citizens for 108 years, since 1917. Me and Benito share that. All Puerto Ricans do. And, so in some ways, I'm as American as they get, and there's other ways, on some level, I'll never forgive this country for colonizing my people. Soy boricua. And we can have quibbles about the status and political ideology. That's fine. There's a diversity of that. Pero tú no puedes decir que nosotros no somos un país. The long goodbye, fam. I think we're all wondering, is it indeed the end? Will this country no longer be really, pretending to be, to try to live up to that Constitution? Or at the very least, recognize that that's the standard we're shooting for in all our imperfections. And of course, African American brothers and sisters have reminded us clearly over this last several days in particular, que, ahora, when white people are getting killed in front of everybody, it's something, right? It's a little different. We've been trying to tell you this for quite some time. So, rest in peace, Philando Castile and George Floyd, and many, many others that have been part of that tragic part of this story, part of this goodbye. So what do we do now? Well, let me say this. That, the last thing, I'm sure everyone will repeat this many times. The last lucid moment, for those that have had the people, loved ones with dementia, it's one of the things that's so insidious about the long goodbyes. There's these like moments of lucidity and clarity. And, you just have a moment. I remember having this conversation. One of the things we all bonded out of my family, my parents, we just love highlighting great things Puerto Ricans are doing and accomplishing things, and the celebrities and the great accomplishments and the characters in our community. And I remember saying something about, Ivy Queen is coming to perform in Philly, stuff just to make conversation with her during this time. And my mom out of nowhere said La Caballota, which is Ivy Queen's nickname for people that don't know. Ivy Queen, historically the biggest female reggaeton singer from Puerto Rico, the island. She's been around a long time. And so you have these like moments, and you have like a semblance of a conversation, and you hope, well, maybe she's gonna get out, she'll recover. And then so we have these like blips. Today we got some blips, right? Bovino got sacked, and we had a couple Republicans show a little something. They're calling for a hearing about the hell's going on in Minnesota. And Minnesota Republican gubernatorial candidate stepped down because he said he won't be associated with his party anymore. And it's we have these glimmers, but at this point it's really flickers, fam. So it's not dead yet, but it's not. We may have to bring it back because it might be dead, but we have to acknowledge that it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. You had, there's these errors. We had errors too, right? I mean, Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, World Wars, 9/11. You go the Civil Rights Movement. You have these all countries go through these tipping points. The Trump era. We're going to look back on it. There was kind of like this pre-Nazi period. Then we're kind of in the shit now of it, and we'll see. Does it take 3 years to get out of it, or does it take 30? So we just have to acknowledge, though, it's a different chapter in history, and it's not really. Certainly from a civil rights perspective, we've been in these kind of fake eras of freedom, but it's just not the same. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? And I have a couple thoughts on that. And look, I guess the first thing is, it's too worth it to give up on. Because on some level we could, and I think this was a dynamic in the first, after actually, I think it started as it became clear Trump was probably going to win in the summer of 24. When you didn't see a lot of enthusiasm for Harris or Biden than Harris. You didn't see a lot of prominent people of color, kind of traditional Democratic, supporters, particularly in the celebrity class, coming out to support her. So the Latinos. There weren't a lot of Latinos that were out here riding hard for Kamala on that level. And, people were just kind of lining up for their pardons. Think about Nikki Anuel and, my Puerto Rican men were total fucking embarrassments. But, somebody in their crew needs a pardon at some point, you would imagine. And I'm sure they got handsomely compensated for those decisions. And they'll have to live with them. But we've got to realize that it's just this country and our family's futures are too important to quit on. And I think we understand this is not to just hide anymore error and keep moving. I think about my nieces and nephews and my kids and just their futures, and I don't want them to live under some authoritarian Putin bullshit. So we got to fight. I think in terms of a couple things, but it's not going to be the same thing. So you got to own that. In this long goodbye process, guys, it's just not going to be the same. One of the things that we're all guilty of it. That you're going to hear me saying this is that familia. We all have limited time, limited emotional capital. They're just limited, okay? And we have to take care of ourselves from a soul perspective. We've got to just stop stressing about these MAGA people in our lives. We just have to do it. And I know, okay, and I saw un respeto, fíjate, Jay Cortez, I don't know if people saw it. Other celebrities have been doing it, but Jay Cortez in the Puerto Rican space was the most prominent one the last 24 hours I noticed. Que puso algo ahí que, si tú estás apoyando hielo, ice, and follow me, no listen to my shit, fuck you. And, people applaud it, and we get all excited, and we share it, and we share shit like that, and we post these dramatic things. Que tú estás apoyando esto, we're not friends no more. Look, we got to create boundaries. So I'm not saying don't do that, but it's kind of a waste time. And I'm going to tell you why it's waste time. Because most important thing is, it's just negative energy, fam. And we need to build this movement around positivity and being together and understanding that we're already the majority to begin with. And this is a righteous cause. Not that we agree on every issue, but that, the focus of wanting this to be a free, open, and inclusive society is the goal. And we all have much more of us, the vast majority of us share that goal. So the reality is, there's going to be a certain part of them. It doesn't matter what you do. They ain't never going to be down with us because they're just so connected to conservative movement or the Republican brand, even antes de Trump, or they're so time encima adentro el culo de Trump, and it's not going to matter what we do. Like, it does not matter. And if you see these images and this doesn't change your mind, there's nothing you and I can do, some piffy post on social media is going to change their mind. This is not about an intellectual debate club thing for them. So their identity, part of a cult, right? Their identity is tied to this guy and this movement. There's not much we can do about it. The other thing is, there'll be a segment of them that'll come around for the same reason they came around for Trump. They're kind of bandwagon, kind of flaky kind of people. So in the same way that they left Trump, they went with Trump, went away from Trump, came back to Trump. They were down with Obama. They didn't vote. They did, they really got into sports gambling. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people that are just bandwagon, ride the wave kind of people. So when we look like the cool side, they'll come around because they flaky like that. So we have to kind of earn their encima con nosotros. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just what it is. Then the other group of them, there's another group of them maybe they're really already with us on some level. They'll get there on their own, but they're going to admit it to you because we some pompous, know-it-all motherfuckers in our crowd. Let's keep that real. Because we're about a lot of I told you so, and we're smarter, and tú no sabes nada, tú es bruto, tú no es educado. We like to put these people down. You're bastardizing Christ. I mean, I believe some of that, and I feel some of that, and I have to restrain myself from expressing that. But coño fam, it's a little pompous to be like that. So, you got to give them some space, okay? But the bigger issue is we don't need them anyway. We don't need them because there's been a lot of scholarship on this. I don't claim to be an expert in movement historically, but there's a lot of interesting scholarship around the fact that the biggest movements in the world, you only need like 3 to 5% of the population to really, really, really be in it, like ride or die on it. So, and the majority of countries with us on this on paper. So we just need a decent percentage of those that are with us to just get more involved and contribute to this cause and get a little braver and be out there more in different ways. So I would just caution you, let's focus on the people we got. And it's like any kind of organizing. The better you treat your customers now, like think of it from a business perspective. What are they going to do? If you take care of your customer base now, what are they going to do? Well, how do you get more business? Referrals. So if we organize together and we do it in the spirit of camaraderie and we take care of each other, we support each other and we're brave for each other and we model the kind of organizing culture and the kind of society we want to have in the future to get out of this mess, because the reality is we should get out of this process better as a better country. We just don't want it to take 30 years. So we've got to, we have to be at our best here. The last thing I would say is, I guess 2 more things. One is we do have to, and I'm going to talk about what we need to do this week. Okay. Around, having the Senate have the stones to say not 1 penny more for DHS and the appropriations bill. But we have to understand it's a long-term thing. It took 11 years for Trump from the escalator to now to become an authoritarian, a full-fledged authoritarian in our country, to the point where it's basically destroyed the country. We have to kind of rebuild it and prevent him from destroying it more and scaling the destruction. So it's going to take some time to rebuild it. Okay. So just understand that. So that's why we got to understand there's what you can do in front of you with the understanding is going to take a minute to do it. There's not going to be one moment where it's over. Oh, there's one big protest and it's going to happen. Not going to be that way. It's just not. It's just not. Because on the flip side, and we're going to talk about this in other episodes, on the flip side, this goes to my last point on this. It's not like, okay, the Democrats, they're just, farting, rainbows and everything's wonderful with them. And they got a lot of work to do for them too. So the party that we're pushing to get in power has a lot of work to do too, fam. Let's be honest about that. The last thing I would say is this does have to be, we have to do some more line drawing here. We all got to hold everybody accountable on this one. And it's politics. I know we focus so much on our celebrities, especially in minority communities. and progress. Where are these people? Okay, where lo hispano? But yes, we have to hold them all accountable, especially these Latino, these Latino celebs. Have been. By the way, much respect to Snow the Product. And if you don't know who that is, Snow the Product, to me, people say Becky G, and she's up there for sure. But I think of all the Latino celebrities and artists, especially music artists, nobody's been a realer one. Cardi up there too, her in her way. But nobody's been realer than Snow the Product. And again, if you don't know her, she's not as famous as some of these people. She's not a Becky G, Cardi B person, but she's pretty famous. And by the way, support her music. Her music's fantastic. To me, Snow the Product is the best Latina rapper we've ever had in either language. Con respeto a Evie and a few others. Pero to me, to spit, Snow number one. And I think even though Pitbull has a really good argument, so I think this is more of a competitive conversation. The best pure, fully bilingual rapper ever in los dos idiomas, in English and Spanish. In terms of someone that can go back and forth in English and Spanish on the same song and the same bars, flow seamlessly, nadie mejor que ella. And she's great. And she's fun. And she's, provocative. And, she's, compelling. And she's cool. And controversial and different. And raw hip hop steez, West Coast. So much respect to Snow. But, I would say that all of them, if the company's not with you, don't support them. If they, if a celebrity's playing games and trying to fudge, don't support them. Our leadership. If Schumer and Jeffries keep with this Millie milk toast thing, and we got to get rid of them, go against them. I'm from Philly, bro. This John Fetterman situation, this boy pathetic. So we have to do whatever we can to shame the shit out of him. The irony is he puts his wife in a terrible position. His wife puts on Twitter over the weekend, Giselle, yo tengo foto con ella at events. I'm campaigning for these people. It's ridiculous. Talk about disappointments. I saw her at an event in the fall. I couldn't even go over to her because I didn't want to be rude. To her and her staff. Respect to Laura, her strap that works with them. Pero, the bottom line is que, she puts on, his wife, Giselle Fetterman, puts on social media over the weekend on Twitter, yo creo. Que, I gotta, charge my laptop here. Que, I was undocumented. I hate what's happening in this country, in Minnesota. I was undocumented for 10 years in this country. And we got to do better than this. Pero coño, maybe your husband could fucking help us out and not vote for the DHS bill. Instead of playing footsie with ICE, okay, it's horrible that these people talk shit about them. Well, they're fucking literally killing us. So yeah, we're going to be a little annoyed. And First Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights, everything. All right, fam. This week, this is what we got to do. I'm gonna put the number on the scroll here. Put the number on the scroll. Y'all got to call your senator. So now what's happening is, unfortunately, they're going through the appropriations process. So unfortunately, they passed all of the appropriations bills. They chop it up by departments, the spending bills. And unfortunately, we had 7 Democrats vote for the bill, 3 Hispanic Democrats. And Vicente Gonzalez and Henry Cuellar in Texas, and Maria Gusenkamp Perez in Washington State. I don't know, for whatever reason, Maria Gusenkamp Perez, buena gente. I saw her speak at a Power Latina thing in D.C. over the summer. She was cool. And for whatever reason, she just, I don't know, ever since the fall, she's just been very anti-Latino in everything she's done. She votes terrible, particularly on immigration stuff. And she was the one que regañó. She had this, I mean, yeah, not a lot of people were happy with what Joey Garcia did, the way our beloved Congressman in Chicago was a wonderful guy, champion for the working people in the Latino community. It was a little politically shady what he did in terms of, kind of la última hora resigning, saying he's not going to run again. So his chief of staff could be the one to put the petitions in, but to go on the House floor and publicly rebuke him, that's bullshit. And, she's just been anti-Latino. I don't know what's wrong with her. I mean, I know you don't have a lot of Latinos in your district, but I mean, it's cool to kill people and like torture people in these detention centers. That could be your fam too, you know? Anyway. And then Cuellar's been, he hasn't been useful forever, other than Latino veterans. I think he does help Latino veterans. I'll give him that. Other than that, he's pretty useless to the Latino community. He's just literally a Democratic vote. That's it. So whatever. But Vicente Gonzalez knows better. And we know he has a more conservative district after redistricting, but Ocoña Vicente, he could do better than this pop. And I like him. We cool. And, it's not personal, but you need to do better. So we'll see. But now those spending bills are in the Senate side. And so hypothetically, if the Democrats, if they don't get 7 votes from the Democrats, at least 7 votes, because maybe 1 or 2 Republicans won't for it either for the same reason, DHS will not get their additional yearly bump. They've already got a ton of money from the budget bill last year. So it's not like they wouldn't be able to pay their ICE officers if this doesn't happen. And partly this is semantical and symbolic because they break all the laws. So they'll find ways to pay these people internally. Where's all that money from all these oil tankers they're stealing in Venezuela? You know what I mean? In some big kind of Qatar. So, so it doesn't shut down ICE in that sense. But it sends a message that we can't be cooperating with these people. You can't give them a penny more. Every penny you give them is another penny they can use to hire more of these deranged guys running around the street. Another penny to put more of us in detention centers where we're getting our people are getting tortured. The thing that keeps me up at night is knowing this is what they're doing in front of everybody with cameras all over the place. What you see on video on your social media is that. Imagínate what they're doing inside these detention facilities, especially to our younger women. That's what should keep you up at night, fam. You need to call your senators. Each one of you got 202-224-3121. Ask for your senators from your local state. 202-224-3121. That is the Senate switchboard in Washington. Tell them you're from Colorado or you're from New Jersey. You're from wherever. You talk to your 2 senators. I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans. You tell them, I'm from this state. This is my community. I'm a voter. This agency is out of control. There's a rogue paramilitary organization pretending they're doing immigration enforcement. Don't fund them a penny more. Period. Show a spine, fam. Show a conscience. Show a spine. Understand this is just one step in reimagining what our country will be in the future to the next era. Look today, Germany's pretty solid spot. You know what I mean? Even kind of inclusive now. I never thought people of color would feel comfortable living in Germany when I was a little kid. So, countries can evolve back. You know what I'm saying? But it was going to take time. But this is the first step, fam. Hold everybody accountable. Call your senators because they're really on the front lines. And I'm gonna put the scroll of our beloved people that we've lost from ICE. Please remember all their names. Obviously, Mr. Prady and Good and Porter are top of the list, but these people that died, and all of these people have just horrific stories. People that were sick, asking for the medicine, asking for medical care. Some beat up. Some, there was one. The coroner determined it as a homicide. So somebody killed them inside one of these detention facilities. One of these guys. So it's fucking horrible. All right, my mandatory Bad Bunny segment. Bad Bunny in Medellin again. Is it Medellin? Medellin. You know that. Anyway, so y'all don't know. People don't follow this stuff much. This is history. The reggaeton movement and Bad Bunny being in Medellin. Medellin is really how would you say? It's very how would you say? It's very appropriate, and it really puts a fine point on the historical evolution of the genre el género urbano reggaeton, for lack of a better term, even though Bad Bunny makes other music. So this is what happened with salsa. Salsa started with the rhythms, and the birth of it was Afro-Cubans that went to New York to play jazz and Latin music and rumba and the mambo era and all that, the 50s and all that back in the day. Most of the Latino musicians were Puerto Ricans. The New Yorkers take that and with Cubans and other Latinos and the influence of jazz and American R&B, toda cosa, create what we think of now as modern day salsa. Puerto Rico, then Colombia started the biggest fan base with Venezuela and South America of these Puerto Rican artists, and then Cali, Colombia becomes kind of like the birth where salsa, the Colombian salsa capital, and they're still popping with the music, and kids in Cali still listen to old school salsa and the dancing. They're amazing. So reggaeton, que pasó otra vez? So el ritmo on the original rhythm is Jamaican dancehall music. The Afro Panamanians that have of Jamaican descent put their Spanish dancehall music flavor into it. The Puerto Ricans take that, do our little twist, and reggaeton, and then we make it more commercially successful. The Colombians are the big fan base, the South American, bridge to the movement, and then Medellin, Colombia becomes the center of their movement in their country. So Medellin, he only performed in Colombia and Medellin. They're very appreciative. I don't know if y'all saw the mayor. I don't have it here, unfortunately. The mayor of Medellin did a whole press conference just thanking him. He said, "You're giving me hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, business, and cultural, revival here with these 3 shows. You were the only city you picked in Colombia. You could have done it 12 major cities in Colombia. You did the 3 shows here. Thank you. Gracias, Benito. Gracias, Benito. Gracias, Benito." And it was wonderful. It's 3 shows this past weekend. I think what was really notable, which I wanted people to note, is that it hasn't gotten as much of attention. It hasn't gotten much of attention, his South American part of this tour, than the island event, because the U.S. Latino market was more focused on that and social media and all that. But what's been very fascinating about his tour in Latin America, especially the South American part of it, is that he has paid homage and at some point incorporated and honored artists from those specific countries that were symbols of resistance music. So in Peru and Chile and in Colombia, he not so much resistance, but he definitely, from like a cultural perspective, he played Colombia Tierra Querida, which is a big cultural anthem song. He did some homenajes for Jason Jimenez, a younger guy that passed tragically last year, and Diomedes Diaz, who I don't know as well, but he's one of the old school Colombian music legend guys. So he's really kind of leaning in on, in cada país, he gives them kind of their flowers. And so that's really, there's obviously a political element of that, kind of highlighting, especially in Colombia and Chile, kind of like indigenous resistance music. And then, but in general, in Latin America, kind of like this unity, cultural pride, and, connecting con el pueblo, right? Then, of course, the last night at Medellin, he had to bring out Carol G. I mean, the second biggest Spanish language star of their generations. Obviously, you could argue Shakira from is older and stuff, but of this musica urbano era, the number 2 in the clubhouse, I guess. No disrespecting Daddy, but Carol's really hot now, and she's fantastic. Carol's a great artist. Puerto Ricans love her. You can't be for these other countries to be as big as Carol G without the Puerto Ricans co-signing fam. That's just the way it goes. So she cool with our fam, and so she had to do it. And they did their classic duet. Ahora me llama. Everybody freaks out. Everybody's excited. Everybody's wonderful. She does a couple tracks. Everybody has a good time. So, Benito did this in Colombia, and of course now he's going to take a break because he's got to get ready for the Super Bowl. It's going to be a couple weeks in Santa Clara, California, for you fucking haters of Spanish language superstar artist Benito Martinez Ocasio. And it's cool because Cardi B gonna be there too, because our man Stephon Diggs, been a great NFL wide receiver, is gonna be in the Super Bowl with his New England Patriots, who kind of had both Stephon and the Patriots had a sort of rising out of the Phoenix rebound season. It had been pretty pitiful since Tom Brady had left them a few years back, and the coach Belichick, and they got a good coach and they got a good young quarterback, and voila, they're back in the Super Bowl. It's going to be an interesting Super Bowl. Not 2 powerhouse teams, but Seattle and New England should be interesting. And Cardi will be there, so it's actually raising speculation. And wow, it's kind of convenient. Cardi already going to be there. Maybe this Cardi will have an appearance during Bad Bunny's performance, I'd be fine with that. But we will see, and we will have a kind of Bad Bunny preview edition of his Super Bowl appearance next week. I'm working on some guests for that. And I want to thank all of you for watching the Collazo Show. Please subscribe on my Substack so you can watch every episode live of the Collazo Show here on Substack. Again, for those that miss the live show, we will have full episodes on our YouTube page, as well as on Substack, and segments on our YouTube page. So please follow the Collazo Show on Substack, and continue to engage in these conversations. Let me know what you think about what are your strategies. What are you doing in your local community to be part of this resistance? There's lots of ways. Obviously, people can contribute in very different ways. What's happened to your community? Do you see ICE increasing presence? What are you doing to inform your neighbors and friends about how they know their rights? What are their rights? And it's very confusing. Seems like unlawful society we are having, increasingly we have. So we'd love to hear what you're doing, how we can support each other, how you're supporting each other, how are you supporting the memory of these 9 souls that we've unfortunately lost, and of course Alex Prieto being the latest one. So sad for this family and all of the families and the loved ones of the people that we've lost because of this this out of control government agency that needs to be reeled in. We need the Senate, Democrats, and all federal officials of good conscience to do the right thing and not give this agency a penny more until major reforms take place. This agency needs to be reformed from the top down, and there's just a lot of work we all have to do. Familia, thank you so much for joining the Collazo Show. Again, please subscribe, share with your friends. The reality is, I'm very fortunate in that there's been very few Latinos in my particular background that have had the opportunity to be a national political operative in my career. And the next generation is more coming. I love support my 20 and 30 somethings that are in the game. There's more of them, and they're dynamic and very talented. But with a little history, a little more experience comes some perspective that I try to bring to the show. Because of this network of activists and friends and people from my other interests, whether it's the arts or sports or other things that we like to bring to the table, there's just not too many places you're going to hear this particular type of analysis at the intersection of leadership, politics, y cultura. Check out the episode we had with Anthony Millian, the great historian and social media content creator that we had last week, about the legacy of Martin Luther King within the Latino community, the connection with Bad Bunny, the connection with Roberto Clemente, the connection with Arturo Schomburg as we approach Black History Month. So definitely check out that episode in our social media channels. Thank you all so much, familia. Get some rest. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I care for all of you, and have a wonderful night.